Hello, everybody. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to wait a minute to see people coming into the room, and then I'll introduce myself. I'm excited. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here because I know how many commitments there are in our lives these days and how difficult it is to make the time to show up. And it really shows your dedication to making a difference in your life, with yourself, with your partner, and creating a great relationship. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm Valerie Green, and welcome to From Fighting to Fulfillment in 2016. So you guessed it, I am a Back to Love coach, and I help couples to stop fighting and experience love, intimacy, and passion again. And so in this webinar, we're really going to learn the tools to stop fighting and to experience more joy, more passion, more connection, more intimacy, and to stop feeling frustrated or distant. So I'm really excited to share these tools with you because by the end of tonight, you'll have some concrete tools that you can walk away with to really create a much more connected relationship. And so before we get started, I want to share a couple of logistics with you. So first of all, the video portion of the webinar takes a lot of bandwidth. So if you have a lot of other web browser tabs open or you're downloading stuff, just try to quit out all the other programs because otherwise it can make the slides blurry. I'll be showing you some PowerPoint slides. And so just make sure that you have as much free space on your hard drive or on your CPU as you can. So quit out of other programs and whatnot. The other thing is that to the right over here, there is a chat box, and I invite you to type in whatever questions you might have. I'm just going to check to make sure that it is operational now. And you can type in questions or share what you're getting. There will be certain points during the webinar where I'll ask you to share, and I would love for you to, so that I can use it as feedback. And you could just use your first name, or when I say who's sharing, I won't share your name. And I really invite you to ask whatever questions. I might not get to all of them till the end. So you'll really want to stay until the end for two reasons. First of all, I'm going to be answering everyone's questions at the end. I'll stay on the line for as long as people keep asking questions. And there's not going to be any selling on the call. It's really just going to be 2 hours of wonderful, useful information to help improve your relationship. And secondly, at the end of the call, I'm going to be offering you an opportunity to get some customized one-on-one support with me at no cost. So I really invite you to stay till the end of the call to hear about that. So wonderful. All right, so we're going to get started. You ready? Okay. So I'm going to, let me see here, get the slides going. I am going to start the slide presentation, and I'm also going to be interacting with you. So here we go. All right, so this is the right place for you if any of these describe you. So if you are in a committed relationship and you regularly feel misunderstood, unappreciated, or alone, or if there's a constant tension, like you're walking on eggshells and you're scared to share your feelings with your partner, or if passion is zapped by being in a rut, maybe you're playing the same scripts over and over again, and so you're beyond frustrated, or if you two have grown apart and you trust them less, and you might be the only one bearing the burden of your relationship improvement. Or if you're single and you want insight into why your relationships haven't worked out and what you can do to create lasting love. So, all right, we have one person that typed into the chat box. She says she's a little tired and excited to be joining. Yay! If someone could just type in, because I have another computer that is also running the webinar, if someone could just type into the chat box if they can see the slides, if they could see the presentation. I just want to make sure everything's working okay because my other computer is not loading it. So I just want to make sure you guys can see the slide. So if someone could just type into the chat box, yes, I can see it, that would be awesome. Or no, I can't. Maybe if no one types in, I'll assume that you can't. What I'm going to say is if you can't see the presentation, then just refresh your browser. Okay, great. Someone said that they can see it. Thank you so much. Okay, so I am going to just share my story with all of you because what makes me qualified to help you to transform fighting into intimacy? I'd really like to share my own journey, and then of course we'll get to you and all of the useful content of the call. So I've been on a personal growth path for the past 15 years or so. And of course, like many people on a personal growth path, I focused on what I wanted instead of what I didn't want, right? Except I did that by suppressing my emotions. So I would just sweep conflict under the rug and I would just pretend like I wasn't feeling bad. And then eventually my feelings would build up and you know, it would explode in criticism. I would be really critical and angry at my partner. And then we would have these heated fights where we'd be sleeping on the couch for the next few days. And I would wonder, you know, why is my relationship feeling so bad? Oh gosh, I mean, it's embarrassing, but I remember one time in my 20s with my boyfriend, he shared something like, you hurt my feelings. And I said, it's your thoughts that cause you to feel hurt. I can't hurt your feelings. And of course, did that just make him more mad at me? So anyway, at that point, I resolved to really learn what it took to have a connected and fulfilling relationship, which took years of trial and error in my own relationships. I studied with many different teachers and I studied many different emotional healing tools. And I did my first coaching training 10 years ago as well. And I really just applied those tools in the trenches with my clients for their past 10 years and in my own relationships. And my biggest transformation happened several years ago in my last long-term relationship before my current partner, where, you know, things went blissfully for the past couple of years, which I'll talk about why that is later. But then eventually we ran into a major unsolvable issue where we experienced the whole gamut of emotions, you name it, resentment, betrayal, hurt, jealousy, anger, and we really were in a rut. And so that's when we worked with the top relationship coaches and teachers that we could find. And that's when I really learned how to unconditionally love myself through everything I was feeling and how to unconditionally love him through everything he was feeling, and how to empathize with my needs and his needs, and how to have the kind of conversations that I'll teach you how to have tonight during this call. And eventually we were just so feeling so much love for each other that, you know, even if he was really upset at me, I could really get into his world and say, wow, you're so upset because you're needing X, Y, and Z, which I'll go over the needs later. What can I do for you now? And let's come up with a way to get both of our needs met. And just, we really had these incredibly deep, close, intimate conversations. And I don't recommend that any couple breaks up until you can have those kind of conversations, because otherwise you'll just repeat the same patterns over and over again in the next relationship, which I'll also talk about. And so when we parted ways, it was out of so much love, and now we're still really close. And because I healed my blocks to unconditional love, I can happily say now that I've been in a blissful partnership with my current partner for the past several years. And we enjoy the most exquisite love and intimacy and passion and mutual support that I've ever imagined, which is what I want for all of you. And so I continued over the last few years to study with different relationship coaches and teachers like John Gottman and Susan Johnson, who are the most results-oriented relationship therapists and researchers in the world. And I attended the Relationship Coaching Institute, which is the largest relationship coach training program in the world. And when I took all those tools and I created a system for couples, which works even if I just work with one partner, right? Because it just changes how you show up. Then my clients had breakthroughs in their intimacy. And they were able to fall back in love and connect emotionally, even if they started out being really angry and resentful. because my program gave them the tools to find the source of the conflict so they could heal it at the source. And that's when I knew I had to bring my coaching system to more people, because it's my passion to transform fighting into intimacy. And that's what we're going to be delving into in tonight's call. So now I'll show the slide presentation, and you will see me again when we do the Q&A at the end. And I'll be doing some fun interactive polls there on the right-hand side too. I'm really excited to interact with you guys. So let's get to it. All right. So just a second here. Great. So here's what we're going to be covering tonight. So we will bust two really popular myths that if you believe these, your relationship is destined to fail, and you will learn your fighting style, which means what you do that keeps your relationship in this never-ending cycle of fighting or feeling distant, so that you can break out of it. And you'll learn how to draw your partner closer to you. So obviously, if there's one thing you take away from today, it would be how to draw your partner closer to you. And you'll learn the rest of the full formula to fix your relationship or save your marriage. And then I'll give you the opportunity for Q&A with me, because some of you will want to go deeper. So are you ready? Okay, let's dive in. All right. So let's bust these myths, shall we? All right, myth number one is that if I'm with the right person, there shouldn't be conflict because it should be easy and feel good all the time. Yes, so we got this myth from the movies, and you know, or maybe we see couples that seem happy on the outside, but we don't actually see what goes on behind closed doors, do we? So I want to give you my first breakthrough that I had when I was studying relationships, which is the truth is that conflict is the vehicle that drives you to grow and heal. So all relationships go through phases, and the conflict phase is a necessary part of the process. What experts call the honeymoon phase lasts between 2 weeks and 2 years, and then every couple enters the conflict phase. So once you grow out of this together, then you can experience a deeper love than you had in the beginning, because you've healed and grown together. I've seen it many times. So the honeymoon stage is what all the love songs are written about. You know, you think about them all the time, and your heart beats faster when you say their name, and your time is magical, and you stay up all night talking and playing. And in the honeymoon stage, there's some powerful hormones coursing through our veins, which actually mimic addictive drugs. And then after a couple of years, the hormones wear off, and every couple experiences conflict. This happens to everyone. So what happens when the honeymoon phase wears off? Well, first of all, you notice the things about your partner that annoy you. You know, like when you meet them, you're really happy that they're so outgoing, and then eventually you get annoyed that they talk too much. Or maybe when you meet them, you're so enthralled by the fact that they're so organized, and you know, they plan all the dates or whatever, and then eventually you think they're anal. So this is just a natural part of the process. And then you also notice what needs aren't getting met, and we'll talk about what needs are later. And this is actually good, because it exposes the unhealthy behaviors that you learn from your parents and society for dealing with your emotions and for relating to your needs, as an opportunity to heal those patterns so that you can grow beyond them. Because everything in nature, if you look to plants and animals, it either grows or dies, does it not? And I love this picture of this tree because it's challenging. It's in a challenging situation here in the sidewalk crack, and like, yet look at how expansive it grows. And everything in nature, it either grows or it dies. So the same is true for us. We're meant to keep growing. And all healthy relationships go through the fighting stage before working it out and becoming happy again. Most couples never realize this, and they just keep fighting throughout their whole relationship. even if they stay together. So the fact that you're here shows that you already know that you're just in a phase and you're ready to grow out of it. And the fact that you're here in this webinar with all these other people, you really can see that you're not alone, right? So it makes sense that most couples never move beyond the conflict stage because our parents and society didn't teach us the tools to grow beyond it. And you've probably learned that fighting is bad and unhealthy, and we've all been in some pretty hurtful fights, so it makes sense that you feel stuck. So I'm here to tell you that there's concrete tools that you can learn to stand together as a team and fight the misunderstanding underneath the argument. Because my assertion is that all fights are caused by a misunderstanding. And you can learn how to stand side by side with your partner as teammates and fight the misunderstanding, which brings you closer together. But yeah, this requires you to grow beyond the skills that you have. So when my clients apply the tools that I teach in my coaching system, they're amazed at how joyful and loving and happy their relationships feel, because they've learned the skills to resolve conflict and create love and intimacy and passion for the rest of their lives. And by the way, if you don't work through your triggers now, they'll just reappear in the next relationship after the honeymoon phase wears off. Because you might meet somebody else and the first couple of years will be blissful. And then you'll find yourself in the same situation again. I hate to say it, but haven't we all experienced that? And listen, I want to make something really clear. I don't want that for you, right? I'm here because it's my divine purpose and mission to take a stand for you and the relationship that you choose to co-create. Has anyone ever shared the full divorce statistics that illustrate that leaving your current partner doesn't make things easier? So I see a lot of people chatting on the side, and I will get to it in a little bit. Just want to go on with the presentation here. Okay, so the full divorce statistics. So the marriage breakup rate in America, we've all heard that between that about 50% of the population, 50% of marriages end in divorce. That's common knowledge. But what they don't tell you is that the percentage of divorce is much higher in second and third marriages. So the marriage breakup rate in America for first marriage is 41 to 50%. The rate after second marriages rises to 60 to 67%, and the rate in America for third marriage divorces skyrockets from 73 to 74%. Can you believe that? You have a better chance of avoiding traffic during rush hour than making your third marriage work. So would you like to know what the solution to this is? It's what I call learning how to love consciously. To evolve past the patterns that you learned from your parents and society, to see conflict as an opportunity to meet each other's needs in a deeper way, to grow together in all areas of your lives, and to reach a new level of happiness than you had in the honeymoon stage. So I'll give you an example of this. First, I'll check the chats on the side to see if there's any relevant questions. Oh, people are just wishing each other well. I love it. Thank you guys so much. Such a wonderful spirit of goodwill. Okay. So when I first saw this one couple that I'm talking about a few years ago, when they first came to see me, he was feeling depleted because his wife wasn't giving him affection and attention, and he felt rejected by her. And she, in turn, was angry and had a laundry list of complaints, some of which included who does the laundry. So when I helped them to dig deeper, they discovered that she needed more quality time and more emotional connection so she could feel affectionate. And when they figured out how to give each other what they needed, and this required growth for both of them, she had to learn to ask for what she needed in a loving way without criticizing and demanding, which we'll talk about later. And he needed to learn how to prioritize his time better and how to empathize with her emotions instead of trying to fix her. to be the rock who could love her when she was emotional, which wasn't easy. I mean, how many men are taught how to empathize with feelings instead of just fix them? And I know that is a cliche. Sometimes it's the other way around. Like I said, it was with me. And it was worth it because then they really felt filled up. And because this man was now receiving love, he felt an overflow of energy to give and serve his clients. So as he learned how to serve his wife's needs better, he also started serving his clients' needs better, which means he started getting a lot more business. So what he told me was, I quoted him because it was really sweet what he said. He said, the reality is that I never had so many people tell me that they want to work with me. Just meet me and say, wow, what a dynamic, amazing individual. You're the one I want to hire. And so coaching has had a tremendous financial impact on me, as well as my confidence, ability, and satisfaction with who I am, which is what he told me. And they both had so much more energy to do community service, contribute to their kids' school events, and become an inspiration for other couples in their community. So all of that because they were no longer putting that energy into having intense fights. So imagine the opportunity provided by your relationship stretching your comfort zone, allowing you to grow to the next greatest version of who you want to be in the world. So taking you deeper, I'm going to guide you in creating your opportunity to grow. So I'm going to give you a minute to write down answers to the following questions that'll give you insight, because the more you really think about how it is that you want to grow and what skills you want to develop, the more energy will be available to you to put it into practice. So I'm going to read the questions out loud, and then I'm going to give you a minute, and I'll read the comments on the right side and see if I can answer any of your questions. I will save most of the questions until the end because I want to get through the presentation. And there's a half hour at the end for questions, which should be really fun. So the questions for insight, you can take out your notebook and write down for the next minute or so. So what are you complaining about in your relationship because you think it shouldn't be like this? And in what ways do you want to grow? What skills, attitudes, and capabilities do you want to learn that will improve your relationship? And then if you dedicate yourself to growing and learning these skills, how will that impact your relationship and your career and your health, your other relationships? So I'll give you a minute to write down some notes. All right. Thank you. I'm going to move on soon. I'm just looking at the questions, and wow, Sophie, thank you for joining us at 1 a.m. from England. Thank you so much. It's very generous of you. And she asks advice about unconditional love because I've only experienced this from animals. And I can address this more at the end too, because I do address a lot of this during the presentation, but it's true. We can't really expect unconditional love from other people. You know, they're in whatever trip they're in. And we do, though, have the choice whether or not to open up to our own source of unconditional love and to see the person in front of us as an opportunity to learn more about the positive intention or the positive needs that they're meeting by doing whatever behavior they're doing. And we'll talk about needs later. So my assertion is that all behavior is here to meet some kind of need. And we'll go over needs later, and we'll go over those behaviors later. So if you really have that lens through which you're looking at the other person's behavior, it's not that it's not loving. It's just that it's what happens when we're not getting our needs met. And so to really give that person, to help shed light on what needs aren't getting met and to help them get those needs met, then they too can experience the love of your listening and your presence and your curiosity. And that's what I found when people can be curious about how to meet each other's needs, that's when they can experience that space of, you know, what many people call love. I believe that love is something that emerges when we're in this space of compassion and curiosity and understanding. So that's the answer I'll give now, and hopefully the rest of the presentation will illuminate your question more, and we can riff more about it at the end. Or over email if you don't want to wait until 3 in the morning England time. I understand. Thank you so much. All right. So let's move on. So we'll go to myth number 2, shall we? All right. So myth number 2 is that most of the time your fights address the real issue. So hopefully this will illuminate Sophie's question too, all of this information. And then I really look forward to speaking about it towards the end. So, all right. So the truth is that most fights start when a partner reacts to a surface problem, whatever it is, money, parenting, who didn't take the trash out, when the real issue is deeper and a long time in the making. So who would like an example? So imagine this. Your spouse is yelling at you. You're late again, and you know from the tone in their voice this conversation is not going to go well, right? So what would you do? Would you explain why you were late? Or would you apologize and say it won't happen again? Or tell them to stop nagging? So if you do any of these things, you'll wind up feeling distant from each other later. And how come? Because only part of their upset is about you being late, right? Being on time is important, but the cause of how strong the upset is from what being late means about the state of the emotional connection between the two of you. So I'll say that again. Most fights are really about the state of the emotional connection between the two of you, not what they seem to be about on the surface. So if your partner's not meeting your needs, it's pretty sure that their needs aren't getting met either. And there's a lot of deeper issues going on that if you just shed light on it, it can become clearer. So I'll go into some examples of what being late might mean to them. So maybe they're upset because they want to feel important to you, or valued, or respected, or supported, or that what they value, like keeping agreements, is paid attention to. And they want to feel connected to you through those shared values. Or maybe they worry that if you don't keep your agreements with little things, how can they trust you to do the big things, like pay the mortgage or even be faithful for that matter? So let's remember the truth that most fights are really about the emotional connection, not what they seem to be about on the surface. So it's really about being curious about what's really going on underneath for the other person. So in my coaching system, I teach couples how to slow down the argument and then tune into each partner's softer feelings and emotional needs. And when I work with one person, I'm really good at figuring out what the other person's emotional needs might be. And then helping each other understand the other person's point of view, to really step into the other person's shoes with all of their beliefs and their history and their point of view and their feelings and their needs, and feel compassion and empathy for each other's side. Because it's really only when you can really step into the other person's shoes and feel what they're feeling that then you know how to join together to create a win-win solution so that both people's needs can get met. And that's when repetitive arguments disappear, because now they're able to connect on this deeper level instead. So for example, I worked with one couple where, and this is a pretty classic example, where she was criticizing and demanding because she said that he would just come home and go on the computer and didn't pick up after himself, and he'd just tune her out. So on the surface, it seemed like he was a jerk and she was nagging, right? But when we can see that it was her raising her voice that triggered him to want to tune her out, and really got into how he felt trapped and controlled by how she asked. And then he could hear that when she criticized him about being on the computer, it was because she missed feeling close to him. Then they softened and felt connected, and then they could work out solutions. Because he was naturally drawn to her once he could feel her wanting to feel close to him. And then they were able to enjoy their time together again. So it was really about getting to the root cause, which had to do with him being sensitive to her tone of voice and her really getting in touch with her vulnerability. And I just love this little picture of the root cause instead of the surface issue. And the good news is that you can learn how to do this. So we'll go into this process later so you can leave knowing how to do this for yourself. All right. So now we're going to learn your fighting style. So is it jujitsu or karate? But really, it's important for you to know your fighting style if you think you're stuck in the conflict stage. So if you remember from myth number 1, we talked about how the conflict stage is inevitable when the honeymoon stage wears off. So here's 9 signs that you're stuck in the conflict stage. And I'm going to put a poll up. You'll probably see it before I talk about it because there's a little bit of a delay. I'm just going to load this poll. And if you don't mind, just as I read the 9 signs that you're stuck in the conflict stage, you can go ahead and answer yes or no. If you find 3 or more signs that, if you find 3 or more of these signs are true for you, then that means that you're likely stuck in the conflict stage. So I just think it's fun to find out what percentage of you are stuck in the conflict stage. So the 9 signs are that either you regularly feel misunderstood, unappreciated, hurt, or alone, or if it feels dangerous to show your softer feelings, or if it seems like your partner isn't there for you, or if there's a fuzzy communication problem or constant tension, or if small disagreements escalate into heated fights pretty often, if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, or sex has become infrequent, or you pretend that you don't need each other, or you pursue while your partner withdraws. So far, looking at the poll, it looks like 100% of you answered yes, that you're in the conflict phase. So you can see that you really aren't alone, because most couples are stuck in the conflict stage if they're seeking help, and it is really just inevitable. Some people just learn better skills of dealing with conflict than other people. So the good news is that once you learn your fighting style, then you can learn how to evolve out of it. All right. So what's a fighting style? It's an unproductive way that one reacts to the partner during conflict that destroys the connection and ultimately sabotages the relationship. That's the bad stuff. So we're going to learn your fighting style, and then we're going to learn to see conflict as an opportunity for intimacy, and that's the good stuff. So something happens when we go from the honeymoon stage to the conflict stage, and that's a kind of a weird cat and mouse dynamic that shows up. It's an interesting dynamic that most couples get caught in. About 75% of couples in conflict get caught in this type of cycle where one partner starts chasing and the other withdraws. One partner gets critical, demanding, angry, and needy, and the other partner retreats into their shell, shuts down, or withdraws. So we'll call the critical, demanding partner the tiger, because when they get upset, they roar. or they pursue like a tiger to try to feel connected to their partner again. It is all coming out of wanting to connect. It's just that it pushes the turtle partner farther away. So the turtle partner is the one that retreats into their shell because they don't feel safe, because they're scared of conflict, because they feel like if they continue to talk, it's just going to turn into a fight. So they actually think they're trying to protect their relationship by withdrawing. So these terms, the tiger and the turtle, they come from imago therapy, which is one of the influences of my coaching system. So during conflict, the tiger attempts to get his or her need for closeness met by speaking louder, by making demands, or becoming clingy, and really coming into the other person's space. And then the turtle freezes, gets overwhelmed, wants more space, or retreats until they feel safe enough to come out again. So is this pattern sounding familiar? Because it's the single most common pattern out of all the couples that I've worked with. So I'm going to put up another poll, and thank you for participating in the first one. Here we go. I'm just going to load this. I'll ask if you think you're a tiger or a turtle, and you can wait to answer until I've described the different behaviors. I'm just going to load the poll here on the right side. All right. So I'll describe the behaviors of the tiger and the turtle. And before I describe them, I want to say that we could be both. Basically, these are caricatures. And it really depends on who you're with, too. Because, for example, like I said, in my previous relationships, I tended to be more of a turtle because I would try to avoid conflict and, tell the other person that they should just not have their feelings, right? So that's classic turtle behavior. And then in my current relationship, I tend to be more of a tiger. Although I've learned how to evolve out of the angry and critical behavior, and I just, I feel a lot of the emotions that tigers feel underneath their behavior, which is that they feel insecure and they need reassurance. And we'll talk about that more later. So we can be both. But when you listen to these, just choose the one that better describes you and what you do when you get triggered, because that will help you to see how you can step out of it, right? It's the awareness that builds the opportunity to do something different. So, okay. During conflict, tigers do the following behaviors. So notice if any of these apply to you as a tiger. So during conflict, tigers will criticize or nag or make demands, or they will act hostile and angry. So that means that, or they'll be needy, which means that maybe they'll make incessant attempts to reestablish contact when your partner is upset. They'll call or text many times, waiting by the phone, or they'll keep score, paying attention to how long it took your partner to return your phone call and waiting just as long to return theirs, or waiting for them to make the first makeup move and acting moody until such a time. Or threatening to leave, like, we're not getting along. I don't think that you're the right person for me. I'd be better off without you. All the while hoping that that'll make them want to stop from leaving. Or trying to make him or her feel jealous, like making plans to get together with an ex for lunch, going out with friends to a single bar, talking to your partner about someone that hit on you today. So these are all intended to make the partner say, oh no, I'm losing them. Let me come back. But of course, we realize that's not how they respond, right? It just pushes the turtle partner farther away. So I want to explain what's going on underneath this behavior, because it seems crazy on the surface, but it's just that these are the strategies that we learned growing up, right? So what's going on underneath all of this is that tigers fear abandonment, and they crave reassurance that their partner cares about them, that they're here to listen to them and understand them and accept them, and that they're not going to leave. So once they really feel that reassurance, then they calm down. So anyway, that's what's going on underneath. And these behaviors might seem crazy, but usually tigers come from families where, for whatever reason, they felt abandoned, whether physically or emotionally, and at least part of the time. So it's a trigger for them. And what do we do when we're triggered? We go into fight or flight. So the tiger fights and the turtle goes into flight. So what happens when we get triggered is that the blood drains out of our brain and into our limbs, and we can't think rationally. So emotionally, we're really at the level of a 2-year-old, or at least a little kid. And how does a toddler act when left alone in a supermarket? That's right, they scream at the top of their lungs. Or else they withdraw and kind of hide in the corner and pretend they're not in danger. So unfortunately, when we're triggered, our brain doesn't have the resources to use more evolved strategies, because what happens is that all of the blood drains out of our limbs and goes out of our brain and into our limbs so that we can fight or run away. So we're not really acting on that much brain power in that moment. So what we need when we're triggered, when we're doing these crazy behaviors, is actually what little kids need, which is comfort and soothing for the deeper feelings and emotional needs, which we'll cover later. So those are the tigers. Roar! So if you're a tiger, now you probably know it. But maybe you're a turtle. So when a turtle walks into my office, it often takes them a long time to come out of their shell and make their way over to the sofa. That is, if they can climb up on it. But in seriousness, many of us are turtles. Like I said, I was one. And I'll tell you later how I transformed after I learned the strategies to evolve into a more secure style. So I'll tell you about that later. But for now, turtle partners tell me they need space from their partner. And often this turtle partner feels afraid that they might be rejected or controlled, so they emotionally shut down to protect themselves and to prevent an argument. So during conflict, turtles do the following, and check in with yourself to see if these apply to you or your partner. So turtles will withdraw, like they'll sit silently engrossed in the paper or in technology, literally turning their back on their partner and not speaking, or not talk, or talking with other people on the phone and ignoring their partner when their partner's upset. Or they will act dismissive, like rolling their eyes when they speak, looking away, and getting up and leaving the room when their partner's talking. So this doesn't have to be dramatic. It could actually look like what's going on inside the turtle partner's head is, when their tiger partner is yelling at them, like, ugh, this again, I can't deal with this. I'm going to get work done, go into the other room and let him or her cool down and tell them to come back and talk to me when they're rational, right? Except we know that just makes the tiger partner more angry, doesn't it? So, or their kind of manipulation is acting busy or unapproachable, or ignoring phone calls, or saying you have plans when you don't. And they're accused of being emotionally unavailable or stoic or aloof. So underneath all this, turtles are really scared of being overwhelmed with emotions. So space is a way of not letting things get out of control. Or they're scared of feeling trapped and losing their freedom. Or a lot of turtles feel like they're scared of not being good enough to please their partner, like nothing they do is good enough. So why bother, because their partner is critical and, nothing they do is good enough. That's a very common thing that I hear from turtles, which is why it's really important for tigers to learn how to stop criticizing and to express their needs and their feelings in a softer, more inviting way, which we'll talk about later. So often, turtle partners learn to withdraw or shut down their feelings as children because their family or culture said things like big boys or big girls don't cry, just get over it. So it's not their fault because no one taught them how to deal with feelings except to turn them off. So, of course, the more the turtle withdraws, the more it triggers the tiger's fear of abandonment, and they get more needy and demanding, which pushes the turtle partner into its shell, and it causes a vicious cycle. Does that sound familiar? It's a very common pattern because I've lived it, like I said. And we can all rise to the challenge, improve it, to grow beyond it. So it looks like from the poll, at least for those of you who answered, there's quite a few people here, and the poll shows so far that everyone who's here is a turtle, which is interesting because a lot of times it's the other way around, that more people are tigers, because it's the tigers that pursue. But I do get a fair amount of turtles that are just tired of their partner being so critical, and they want to know what they can do to, make the relationship better. So I really applaud you for taking responsibility for that. And I'll certainly share some valuable tools for both the tiger and the turtle to evolve past these patterns. So thank you for participating. All right, so tigers and turtles, they tend to be attracted to each other, which is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because there's lots of passion in the beginning, right? Because they're the reciprocal opposite that can balance you out. But it's a curse because if you're not conscious, you'll drive each other crazy until you get help and figure out how to transform this dynamic. And if you don't get help, chances are you'll break up or keep recycling the same issues over and over again, which leads to disconnection, a lack of trust in the relationship, and a lack of safety. And then when there's no safety because you're fighting a lot, that's when the intimacy dies. So I hate to ask it, but just quietly answer to yourself, does this sound all too familiar to any of you? Or does it ring true from your relationships from the past? So my clients tell me over and over that they get stuck in this repeating pattern like a broken record. And it can feel not just draining, but it can be despairing, like they want to throw their hands up and say, I'm done with this. Which is why it's really important to recognize that this pattern is playing out in your relationships. Because the more the turtle withdraws, the more it triggers the tiger's fear of abandonment, and then they get more needy and more demanding, which triggers the turtle's fear of rejection or being overwhelmed or controlled or not being good enough, and then they withdraw more, and then the cycle just continues and continues. And this pattern is really the problem, not the partners. It's the pattern that takes them both over. And that's why one of the first things I support my clients to transform in my coaching system is to see the pattern as the enemy and join together to fight the pattern instead of fighting each other. So we're going to learn how you can step out of the pattern. And we'll go into that soon. Because if you're conscious, you'll understand what's going on. Then you know why it's not each other's fault. So would you like to know why it's not your fault? It's because we all have wounds that we develop growing up. We all have a fear of abandonment or rejection, which are the two biggest fears of the tiger and the turtle, respectively. We all feel like we're not lovable enough at times. And these are just wounds that we developed growing up. But would you like to hear the good news? I know there's not much of that on CNN these days. Because we all have childhood wounds. None of us are alone in this. And all wounds can heal. Because if you think back to the last time you helped your partner recover from a scrape or a cut or any other injury, you were able to nurse them back to health with love, didn't you? The wound healed on its own, but it was the love that really helped bring you closer together. So the good news is that once you're aware of their childhood wounds, then you can help each other heal them. And of course, this isn't therapy, and of course there's a place for therapy. So it isn't about focusing on the past. It's about holding each other's tender feelings with sensitivity and support, and doing behaviors that meet each other's needs that weren't met in childhood helps to heal the wounds that were developed in childhood and the beliefs. And stretching yourself to meet their needs helps to integrate new parts of yourself so that you can grow by being able to meet their needs in a new way, so both people grow. So for example, I worked with one client whose father would get really angry and yell, and she was triggered every time her partner raised his voice even a little. Like even when he was just passionate about something, she was triggered, and he just was like, she's crazy. Why is she getting upset because I'm not doing anything? So it wasn't until I helped him to really hold space for how sensitive she was to tone of voice. And then because he realized what really happened in her past, then he could comfort her and soothe her and say, oh, I'm here for you. I'm not trying to hurt you. And he could really meet her needs for understanding and soothing. So then they were able to create a hand signal that she would use to tell him to soften his tone. And he got it. And he soothed her in the moment. And then she wasn't taking it personally anymore. And then they no longer would get into these heated fights over nothing. And then, of course, they could continue to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about, because before they couldn't have a conversation. They were scared of her getting upset. So there are many ways to help each other heal rather than continuing to trigger each other, once you learn to approach each other's sensitive spots with empathy and tenderness. So the first step in healing this is learning from what the other 50% of the population does. So approximately 50% of the population is either a tiger or a turtle. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. So 50% of the population is either a tiger or turtle. So what's the other 50%? So the third style is what researchers call the secure style. So, okay, the tiger and the turtle are really attachment styles. But fighting style is much more fun, isn't it? So this all comes from a body of research called attachment theory, which started out studying how children form secure bonds with their parents. And for the past 30 years, researchers have been studying couples and how they form what's called attachment bonds. And would you be surprised to learn that they found that there are certain behaviors that secure people have in common that make relationships last a lifetime? So would you like to find out what they are? So secure people are really good at feeling comfortable with emotional closeness. It doesn't scare them away, both pleasant emotions and even unpleasant emotions. Because when their partner's upset, they're able to listen and reassure them and comfort their partner when they're upset instead of taking it personally. Because they're able to identify the needs that are underneath the upset, both in themselves and in the other person. And they feel comfortable with meeting their partner's needs and creating a healthy dependence, like we're going to talk about in a bit, because they're not thinking that they don't need anyone and they're not being needy. They're really comfortable with having a really interdependent relationship where we do have emotional needs, and we'll talk about those in a bit. And they're also, they trust. Oops, sorry. Get to that slide in a minute. They trust that when there's conflict, that they can approach their partner with the belief that there's a win-win solution to get both people's needs met. So can you imagine how it would be if when there's conflict, you really approach your partner with a curious attitude, like what's going on for you and what's going on for me and let's work this out together, rather than being upset about it. So that's what secure people can do. And with that attitude, then they're always able to find a win-win solution, or at least some kind of solution that makes them both feel fulfilled. And we'll talk about that later. So it's proven, like I said, that these behaviors can be learned. It's not like you're born with them. Guess where you learned them from originally? Of course, it comes from modeling our caretakers as children. So you can relearn how you respond to conflict and getting your needs met as an adult, because you can teach an old husband new tricks after all. So basically, whether a tiger gets needy or demanding or a turtle withdraws, both are protective strategies against feeling vulnerable emotions like fear or hurt or sadness or shame or longing. because those are vulnerable and maybe you'll share them and get hurt. So it makes sense that we will share things like anger instead, but then that pushes your partner away. So if I'm really going to bottom line this for you, securely attached people unleash or transform their vulnerability as a secret weapon of love. And tigers and turtles protect against feeling vulnerable. But as I'll show you soon, there are steps that turtles and tigers can take to be able to tune into their more vulnerable feelings and needs. And as you probably guessed it, that's what secure people do when they fight, that de-escalates conflict and turns it into an intimate conversation instead. Because the turtle and tiger can model what secure people do and create a secure relationship. So I'll talk now about what tigers and turtles can do to transform their anger and resentment and fear into opportunities to draw your partner closer. So the steps that tigers can take to become more secure, and this is what I do when I work with a tiger partner one-on-one, is to really learn, first of all, how to get out of fight or flight. How to get out of that fight mode. So either slow down and take 5 deep breaths, because that's actually what they teach police officers to do in stressful situations, to take 5 deep breaths, to stay present to what's really going on. And sometimes you have to move the energy, like working out or hitting pillows or whatever, to get the anger out, because there are softer feelings underneath the anger, like fear and sadness, longing. So when you can really tune into those softer feelings, that's what really helps to endear closeness with somebody else, when you share the softer feelings. And also, if you are able to hear their softer feelings, you might need to hear theirs first. And number 3 is to identify your unmet needs, to turn your partner into an ally instead of an adversary, and to trust that your partner wants to meet your needs if you express them differently. So it needs to really be that you express this with a trusting attitude. And I'll do a little role play in a bit to really demonstrate what that means. And to express your feelings and needs in a way that endears your partner to you, that draws them closer. Because there's a way to draw them closer, and then there's also a way to push them away, when you're sharing. So there's several ways that you can express your feelings, and I'll be demonstrating the difference between them in a bit. Okay, so that's the steps that tigers can take. So here are the steps that turtles can take to help to become more secure. So turtles can learn how, when their partner is yelling at them and when they're, critical and demanding and needy, to see underneath all of that. And to see the vulnerable feelings and needs, and to soothe the vulnerable feelings and needs. And this is really counterintuitive, because I know that we just want to push the tiger partner away and say, go and see the other room. But of course, that has the opposite effect of what we want. So to really empathize instead of dismissing or fixing, empathize with the feelings, especially the more vulnerable. First the anger, and then the more vulnerable feelings. Because if you really just listen to the anger, don't take it personally, create a boundary around being attacked, of course. But validate the anger, then they'll open up about their softer feelings and needs, and then you can have a discussion about how you can get both of your needs met, and to really give that reassurance that you care and you want to create a solution together. So not leaving, and really staying present and giving that reassurance that you care. And of course, there's many different types of things that tiger partner needs to feel soothed. Because many people grow up in families where you suppressed your emotions and you never learned how to soothe, so you might not even know what that means. So if this doesn't come naturally to you, I teach a step-by-step, word-for-word process to learn how to soothe each other, so that you can heal each other's insecurities and feel close again. And if you want to know more about that, I'm here for you in Q&A time. So turtles also have to learn how to tune into their own feelings and needs and ask for them. Because a lot of turtles grew up in families where they were taught they needed to be strong and they might not think they have feelings and needs. So learning how to be vulnerable is the key to really letting their partner in and being closer. Because I've seen it again and again that when the tiger's insecurity is soothed, then they get less angry. And then the turtle feels safer to express their feelings. And that's when you stop fighting and feel that secure emotional connection again. All right, so tonight we're going to do an exercise where we really learn how to express our feelings and needs in a way that draws our partner closer. So first, we'll just share some distinctions about the exercise, and then we'll do it. All right. So the key distinction here is that securely attached people are able to turn their partner into an ally when they're upset. So they can solve the problem together rather than seeing them as the enemy. This is basically the key difference. Because it's not that anger is bad. Anger is a valid emotion. But it's what you do with the anger that matters. You can use the emotion. You can use the force of the anger to identify with your needs and fight the misunderstanding with your partner instead of fighting your partner. So I'll do a little bit of a role play to demonstrate this before I explain about needs, and we'll do an exercise. All right, so I want you to pretend that you're my partner. And let's say that I perceive that you're spending more time with your friends than me. And I'm in the other room and I hear you talking on the phone with your partner. I mean, with your friends, sorry. You're talking on your phone with a friend and we haven't been spending enough time together. And now I'm jealous because I'm like, what about me? And you care more about your friends than me. And that's what's going on inside my mind. So I'm going to approach you about this in two different ways. So the first is as a tiger, and notice if you recognize yourself or your partner here as a tiger. And the second will be as the lauded secure attachment style. Okay, so first, as a tiger, if I'm not getting underneath my jealousy and I'm just expressing it, I would say something like this. So I'd go into the room when I hear you get off the phone, and I would say something like, "You talk more to your friends than you do to me. They must be more important to you. You never make time for me anymore. You obviously don't care." So if anyone wants to share in the chat how they feel hearing me say that, how that occurs to them, feel free. And so now I'll practice the secure conflict style. So what I would do then is same scenario, you're in the other room and I'm hearing you talk on the phone with your friend and I have the same jealousy, right? It starts out with the same emotion. And except now I know how to do those behaviors that I shared a few slides ago for the tiger about how to take deep breaths, how to tune into the deeper emotion underneath. I trust that you want to meet my needs, and I approach you as an ally. And so I say, okay, I'm really tuning into that longing underneath, right? So when you get off the phone, I'll go into the other room and I'll make sure that I have a soft tone of voice. And I'll go into the other room and I'll say, so when you were talking, well, first I would ask, is this a good time to talk? Because if it's not, then we'll talk later. But if it is, then you're ready, right? So I would say, when you were talking on the phone with your friend for an hour and you seemed so happy, I felt jealous. And underneath that, I feel sad because I miss when we used to talk for hours. And I want to make more time to connect with you like that. And I know that we're both so busy and it's going to be hard for us, but I really want to work that out with you. How would you feel about talking about how we could spend more time together? So, of course, that feels better, right? And feel free to share in the chat room how that feels differently. So, like I said, it's not like it's bad to express things like anger or jealousy rather than the more vulnerable feelings. It's how you express it. So in both cases, I said I was jealous, but in the second case, I also shared my vulnerable feelings and my needs, and I said that I trusted to work it out together. So that's all really important. So notice how that turns you into an ally instead of an adversary. All right. And of course, you have to trust that your partner wants to meet your needs, and that might have to do with your beliefs. So, of course, working on your beliefs is beyond the scope of this webinar. But I wanted to touch on that, and of course, I touch on that in my one-on-one practice, because who you're being is more important than the words you use, right? So, it's important that your relationship has emotional safety, right? Because if you're scared that you're going to share if you're scared that you're going to be rejected or abandoned when you share your feelings, then you're not going to feel safe enough to do this. So that's the first thing that we create is emotional safety. So that's what I'll talk about later when I talk about how I work with clients in my program. But for now, we'll learn some useful tools that you can practice right away. So remember that I was talking about how a secure relationship is built on a foundation of securely meeting needs. So what do I mean by needs? So I'll show a slide that talks about needs and what they are, and then of course we'll go over them. Because in our culture, we're taught not to be needy, right? To be self-sufficient. And that's wonderful when we can do that. But this also means that we risk hiding our vulnerable feelings and needs out of fear of rejection or abandonment, and we pretend everything is fine, and this causes us to feel disconnected. So we have to learn how to share our deeper feelings and needs in order to endear our partner to us, because that's what builds closeness and trust. So I'll read these needs in a minute, and you can look at them. And it's obvious by looking at them, we do all have emotional needs, do we not? Because, remember the first time you kissed yourself on the lips and how wonderful that was, how magical. Everyone try kissing yourself on the lips right now. Oh, you mean it's not magical? Clearly we have some needs that we really do healthfully depend on our partner to satisfy. So I'll read these needs out loud in case the slide is blurry for anyone that has a slow internet connection. And I invite you to check in with yourself to see if these needs apply to you. So these needs are, and I'll just read them in the first person, and these needs come from a teacher named Susan Johnson in her book, Hold Me Tight. And I'll give you a handout in a bit that has these needs in them and has that book recommendation on it, because that's a book that I recommend for all of you. For everyone, really. I think it's a lot of my coaching system is based on what she writes in Hold Me Tight, and a lot of this webinar. So she's definitely one of my most valuable teachers. So these needs are, I am special to you and you really value our relationship. I'm wanted by you as a partner and a lover, that making me happy is important to you. I am loved and accepted with all my failings and imperfections. I can't be perfect for you. I am needed. You want me close. I am safe because you care about my feelings, hurts, and needs. I can count on you to be there for me, to not leave me alone when I need you the most. I'll be heard and respected. Please don't dismiss me or leap into thinking the worst of me. Give me a chance to learn how to be with you. I can count on you to hear me and to put everything else aside. I can ask you to hold me and to understand that just asking is very hard for me. I need that reassurance that I'm number one with you and that nothing is more important to you than us. I can count on you to hear and respect my opinions. So those are just the most important emotional needs. And now maybe it's easier to see that as much as we don't want to be needy, we do all have these needs, do we not? And as much as we don't want our partner to be needy, we do want to come out a winner by learning how to satisfy their needs, don't we? My clients show me that there's creative ways to meet both people's needs once you're connected. It's not like you have to meet these needs a particular way. Like if you look at them, you'll see that there's many ways to meet them. Because once you learn exactly how to meet each other's emotional needs, that's when your relationship goes from feeling like a battlefield to feeling like a safe haven because you're teammates again. So now we're going to do an exercise that puts this all into practice. So I'm going to give you guys a link to a handout that should open in another tab, and you'll see it on the right-hand side of your screen. And basically, I'll give you a few minutes to do an exercise. So the first page has the exercise and the a few vulnerable feelings on it, and the second page has the list of needs that's up on your slide. So if they're blurry on the slide for any reason, they're on the second page of the handout. So you can see the handout by clicking on the right-hand side of your screen. It should be up there. Okay, so basically the exercise is to remember a recent argument and one that's only mildly upsetting. Like, don't remember an argument where you both, give each other the silent treatment for a month. Remember something minor that happened lately that got you mildly annoyed. And see if you can get underneath the anger or annoyance to one of the softer feelings and needs that are listed below. And once you do, to write a sentence describing what happened, what you felt, and what you were needing. And I'll explain to you how to write it in a way that draws your partner closer. So first of all, when you describe what happened, you really want to describe it like a video camera would see it without any interpretations. So what do I mean by that? Well, for example, a video camera wouldn't see that, if I was to say, when you were flirting with that other woman, like a video camera wouldn't see flirting. A video camera would see you talking to a woman, right? There's no interpretation in that. There you are, you're talking to her. So you see how if you make an interpretation like that, that just automatically puts your partner on the defensive. So really describe what happened like a video camera would see it without any interpretation. And then when you share your feelings, you don't say, if you say, I feel that, or I feel like, that's a thought, right? Like, I feel that that you don't love me. Like, that's actually an accusation. So a feeling is something like, I feel, and especially a softer, vulnerable feeling is something like, I feel scared, or I feel insecure, or I'm really longing to feel closer. Those are more vulnerable feelings. And then when you express your needs, you want to try to express them not like you're asking your partner to change a behavior right away, because that's something that you can collaborate on. But you really want to share one of the needs that is either in the slide or on the second page of the handout, because those are these emotional needs that we all have, and they're needs that draw your partner closer to you. And so I will give you a minute to write out a sentence about what you would say. And if you want, you can share in the chat room what you're getting out of it. So I'll just take a minute and give you some time right now to write that out so that you can ask me questions about it towards the end. All right. So I'll still give you some time. I want to answer a common question that I've heard a lot of times in response to this exercise, which is that, well, what if you speak vulnerably like this and your partner still perceives it as an attack, right? Of course. And that's because they have their own feelings and needs. So if you can really listen underneath the surface of their complaints and hear their feelings and needs and validate their feelings and needs, that's how you can create this way to meet both your needs and their needs. So for example, let's say you share whatever you just wrote down, we'll use the example that I used in the role play. Let's say, the one where I shared that I was jealous. Let's say I shared that in a really vulnerable way and said, I'd really like to make time to be closer to you. Can you, what can we do to make more time for each other? And I'm really vulnerable. And let's say their response is, you shouldn't be jealous. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Right? In which case, what you can hear is that their need is to be accepted, right? They don't want to be made wrong. They think you're making them wrong. So you might say, honey, I know that you didn't do anything wrong by calling your friend. I want you to talk to your friends. I'm not making you wrong. I just miss you. And I want to talk to you about how we can make more time for each other. So do you see how I validated his need for acceptance? And then I restated what I wanted him to hear? So of course, this is, one thing to hear now, and it's another thing to put into practice. And of course, this exercise is just a taste of all the exercises that I teach. I just wanted to give you one that you could take right away and use in your relationship. And of course, one of the things that my clients tell me that helps them the most is to practice a process like this with an objective third party, either me or someone else, to be able to help them to change behaviors and patterns that have become automatic. Because they tell me it's really valuable to practice something like this with someone when you're not in the heat of an argument, right? Because it's really difficult to stop when you're already fighting and do something different, isn't it? So that's why it's important to practice with an objective third party, so that when you're on your own, you have specific tools to practice. And when you practice enough that it becomes more automatic, then that's how you shift the pattern to transform fighting into intimacy. Because I got to tell you, I've been practicing tools like this for years, and I still get really upset sometimes. And sometimes I'm not able to soothe my own upset. Sometimes I go to my partner and I say, I'm really upset, and I have no idea how to get underneath the upset, and I just have every inclination to make you wrong. So can we take out this tool and practice it? And we do it together, And so I really have a lot of faith in the tools, because I use them even in my current relationship, and they still work. And it's not always easy to do this on our own. Sometimes we need another person there to help us. So, and that's why it works when I work with people one-on-one, because then they can process it with me. So, we're not meant to do this work on our own. We're meant to do it with another person, either our partner or someone else that really knows these tools. All right, so would we appreciate hearing more about the steps that I see that most people need to take to navigate through the conflict stage and back to feeling in love again? So to start, we need to know where we're going, and then the path unfolds. So I talk a lot about emotional connection. What do I mean by emotional connection? So I see connection as having three components. So number one is that you can enjoy each other's company, and the space between both of you feels harmonious. And number two is that you feel safe enough to share your vulnerable feelings and risk being accepted by the other person, which is a big risk. And so it has to feel safe enough. And what's the third component? It's to not be an opponent and to be on the same team. That you can trust that your partner has your back and is rooting for you. So these are the three experiences that we're really looking for when you're emotionally connected, and that's when these win-win solutions just come more easily to us. So how do we get there? So I'll tell you the steps to fix your relationship struggles and be happy together. And they come straight from my private Back to Love coaching program, where I guide couples, or successfully even one partner, to discover how to feel close, connected, appreciated, and passionate again. Because what you've learned tonight is just one step. And I'd like to share a little about how I work with people in my system, because it takes all of the following steps to heal the issues at their source, so you can develop the deep intimacy and trust that allows you to feel truly passionate about each other. So first, we create positive emotional experiences. Before we delve into the more vulnerable emotions and issues, we first need to create a stronger bond between each partner. We do this by creating positive experiences every day. We find positive ways for the partners to connect as a couple, both verbally and non-verbally, every day, that only have to take 5 minutes. So they rebuild the foundation of what made them fall in love in the first place. And these make a huge difference in the love that they feel for each other. So for example, when was the last time you called your partner for just 1 minute, just to tell them about a dream you had, or read them a poem, or appreciate them and not talk about logistical things? Or wait until you learn the 3-minute hug that I teach that has your partner melt into your arms like never before. So next, we create emotional safety. We create emotional safety by learning how to soothe each other's angry or vulnerable feelings and de-escalate conflict, like we did in the exercise. Because that exercise is just a taste, like you experienced, and you can imagine how challenging that is to actually put into practice on a daily basis. So that's what I help my clients to do, is to put it into practice. Emotional safety allows them to go from feeling like a war zone to feeling like a safe haven, where they're teammates again. And I tell my clients, don't worry, because if it's difficult for you to express your vulnerable feelings, you'll learn how to access your inner landscape and open up in a way that creates deep trust and fosters an unbreakable bond between you. So next, we learn how to meet each other's emotional needs. We learn how to listen to each other in a way that makes your partner feel loved and appreciated and respected and heard, right? Because it's one thing to see a list of these needs, like, yeah, of course, we all need acceptance, we all need to feel important. It's another thing to listen in a really deep way to what that need means to the person, what it really would look like and feel like when it's met, and when has it felt met in the past, and how does that relate to their beliefs and values and history. And once you really learn how to listen to your partner in this way, then that's when they say, wow, my partner is the only person in the world that truly understands me. And that's when you really have the ability to get into each other's world and see what the need means for them. And that's when you get transformed by figuring out, that's when you really feel motivated to figure out new ways to meet each other's needs, is when you learn how to listen to each other in this way. So then, after it feels safe enough, that's when we really are able to end recurring conflict and heal old wounds from the past. Cute little picture, right? Because if we don't resolve wounds, they keep recurring over and over again. Because if you look back on all your relationships, you've probably been experiencing the same issues or the same arguments again and again, haven't you? Or if you're dating, do you keep dating the same man or woman, but they're just in different bodies? I know I did that until I healed the underlying issues and started attracting a new kind of man. If you don't heal the underlying limiting beliefs and wounds, that's when they keep recurring. So I help resolve them so they don't come back. And of course, This is coaching and not therapy. So it's based on action and not just insights. We uncover patterns and we learn how to meet each other's needs. And I use things like neuro-linguistic programming and experiential healing tools to really identify the unconscious beliefs and heal them at their source. And of course, you learn practices if you see me together to be able to heal each other's wounds by meeting each other's unmet needs. And the fifth step in my system is to learn how to appreciate each other's differences and solve long-standing issues together, because now that you're actually not fighting anymore, now is when you have the emotional bandwidth to be able to learn why you're attracted to somebody who's so opposite and how you can learn from them and work together to learn from each other, because you can realize that you're not incompatible and you can be stronger together because you each have different strengths and weaknesses that complement each other. So now that my clients are connected and feel like a team, then it's easy to create win-win solutions to long-standing issues where both people, instead of trying to change each other, learn how to love each other the way you each want to receive love. Could you feel how lovely that would be, to be appreciated for your differences instead of your partner trying to change you? So for example, I worked with one couple that would judge each other around how they spent money. Pretty common one. So she was a saver, and she judged him as irresponsible. And he was a spontaneous spender and judged her as controlling. So once they were emotionally connected and can feel what he got out of spontaneity at a really deep level, and what satisfaction she got out of feeling secure by saving, then they could soften and feel connected. And then they were easily able to secure a budget, which they both loved, that also saved enough money for spontaneous spending. So that win-win solution was only possible once we really got underneath what both of those values meant to them. And then they felt like a team again, and they wanted to meet each other's needs instead of fighting about them. And the last key element in my coaching system is deepening physical intimacy and passion. Because now that the partners are connected, physical intimacy can be a joyful way to celebrate. We're taught that it's about positions and techniques and toys and novelty. I hear people tell me, I went out and bought 50 Shades of Grey. That should spice things up. And that's great. But most of the time, that's not the real issue. It's not a quick fix that's going to work here. Because when you're arguing or avoiding conflict and walking on eggshells, the first thing to go is deep physical intimacy. You might still be having sex and wondering why it feels so disconnected. So now that clients feel that they can tell each other everything, now they can embark on erotic adventures together. And clients tell me this is the best sex they've had in their lives. Because once you have trust and connection and a way to navigate through the emotional landmines and turn them into intimacy, then your sexual experiences are going to be passionate celebrations. So I've created a step-by-step curriculum that takes people through this whole system, where I hold their hand and give them solutions and answers and strategies and tools to experience love, intimacy, and passion again. So you might be wondering, who will get the most results from this Back to Love coaching system? So I see the biggest results if you are a goal-oriented, committed couple, or just one half of the troubled relationship, and you value personal growth, because you might be surprised that as one person, you can turn your relationship around and inspire your partner. It's actually happened a lot where I start working with one partner and the other partner sees how much better the relationship is getting, and then they come in and join after a few sessions. And whether I work with just one or both partners, what works the best is if both of you want to unlearn your own blocks to intimacy and connection instead of just blaming the other person, right? Because then you're not going to get anywhere. And I get the best results with people that are really willing to put the tools into practice in their life each week, right? Because the real change happens out in your relationship. You have to practice the tools here with me, and then, of course, what the real work is in your life. So what's the next step? Well, if this really resonates with you and you're serious about transforming your relationship, then I invite you to apply for a free one-on-one private Back to Love strategy session with me. And what'll happen is we'll get on the phone or Skype or meet in my Manhattan studio if you're in New York for 90 minutes and identify what might be holding you back from having the relationship of your dreams and leave with a plan for how to get there. So, if you're in a committed relationship, the session can be with both you and your partner. Or if you're the one who's leading the crusade, then I can meet with you privately and we can come up with a plan for how you can best transform your relationship and inspire your partner to join you. These sessions are valued at $150 and I'm offering them free to all of you for showing up. And I only have 12 open slots in my calendar this month. So I do invite you that if you're interested to click the link that I'm about to load on your screen. And you should see it now. And it should be on the right-hand side. And I invite you to click the link and fill out an application ASAP. So what I'll do is I'll review the applications, and if I feel that there's a match, then I'll contact you so we can get something set up in a time frame that works for you. So go ahead and click the link on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you're watching the YouTube video replay, then I will paste the link in the comments. And go ahead and sign up for a free 90-minute Back to Love strategy session. And I look forward to connecting with you either privately or in a second, I'll stop the slide presentation and I'll take some questions for the next half hour because I'm here for you to answer your questions. I'll go back to the chat now. And I am going to stop the slide presentation and here I am again. Nice to see you guys, or to feel you guys, your presence. There's still a few people here attending. So I invite you to type into the chats. I'm just looking at the chats now. So this is really the time that you can share with me anything that's frustrating you or confusing you in your relationship and get a chance to hear my advice on it. And of course, since it's just the chat, you can keep chatting with me, and I'm not going to answer in the chat. I'm going to answer out loud. So you get the opportunity to have me answer your questions. And I'll wait, another 10, 15 minutes to see who feels like answering questions, or you don't have to ask questions. You can just share what you got out of tonight. You can share what you got out of answering the questions about how you want to grow, or what you got out of the exercise, what you're struggling with the exercise, or if you have any questions about it, or feel free to say, hey, I don't understand this, explain that to me. I'm really here for you. So, all right. So someone's sharing, I've been dating a guy for 5 years and he still won't say I love you. Yeah, that sounds really tough. I imagine it's really hard for you to feel like you're getting your emotional needs met if you won't say it. Have you talked about the fact that he won't say it, or is it sort of an elephant in the room? And the question that I would ask is how have you talked about it? Like, have you really talked about what his feelings are, what his hesitation is, in a way that's, curious and not accusatory? There's a big difference between being curious when you ask what's going on and being accusatory. So she's saying, yes, I've told him I need to hear it. That's really tough. Yeah. And so have you really been able to curiously ask him what's going on for him that he doesn't say it? Is he scared of something? Is he scared of hurting you? Is he scared of because of something that happened in his past? I do talk in my, I don't know if you've had a chance to see my, the video that that you get when you sign up for my mailing list. I created a video, 3 steps to stop fighting and start connecting. And I have that on my homepage if you go to my homepage, coachvaleriegreen.com. So I explain this distinction of putting on a detective hat. I actually have a detective hat that I put on in the video. And what that means is like really feeling authentically curious about what's going on for the other person. That, you know, what's his history around saying, I love you, and what does that mean to him, and what's he scared of? So he says that I don't say it, but I don't want him to say it just because he says, I don't say it, but I don't want him to say it just because I say it. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to have a more in-depth conversation about this, like what you're really feeling. What's the fear underneath it for you? And she's saying he calls me names and belittles me. And I mean, in that case, you know, I would have to really hear what's going on there. Because obviously, if it's some kind of emotional abuse, then I would advocate getting out of the relationship because nobody deserves that. And if it's not abuse, but he's just calling you a name like, you know, you're insensitive or something, a label, then it sounds like he's more of a tiger. And then it's about really getting curious about what are his emotional needs and what does he need to feel safe, and what kind of reassurance does he need, and what kind of soothing does he need for his emotions that are underneath the quote unquote belittling. I mean, I really want to take that seriously. Like if he's really belittling you and putting you down, then, you know, you don't deserve that. And then maybe it is abuse. So we would have to have a more private conversation about that. Maybe set up a strategy session with me, because it really is free. I love to offer my free support to people. And of course, if we keep working together after that, that means that I can really help you to solve that. But the strategy session is just free. And then I can really get a sense for your unique situation. Yeah. She's saying he calls me stupid and retarded. And I mean, like I said, I would need to get more curious around what that behavior looks like, because there's a way that people could say that in a way that really is abusive, and in that case, you know, there's deeper issues going on there, and you would have to decide what your limit is and what your boundaries are, and whether or not you should get out of the relationship. I definitely don't advocate everyone staying in the relationship that they're in if there really is emotional abuse going on, because name calling can be emotional abuse. And also sometimes tigers do name calling in a way that's not abusive, but that's really hurtful. And so it's not just that they need reassurance. That's what they're needing that they don't realize that's underneath the name calling is reassurance. Like something like, you know, I would need more context in order to know how to answer the question. But an example is like, you know, if you're arguing and he's calling you stupid, then you can kind of use ninja listening skills that I teach to figure out that like he's actually the one that's feeling unsure about what to do, and he's like projecting that onto you. And so to be like, hey honey, like you're not doing it wrong, you know, I'm accepting you. But at the same time, you need to create a boundary. Like, it's not okay to talk to me like that. I do not accept name calling, but to do it in a loving way, like, honey, I love you and I don't accept name calling. And so you need to have the courage of really feeling love for him and expressing love for him, not waiting until he does in order to express it to you, but at the same time creating a boundary. Like, that's name calling and I don't deserve that. And so, but not leaving the room because of it necessarily, unless he really does get emotionally abusive. So there's a way to really be loving and create a boundary at the same time. Like it's not loving to talk to me like that. I want to relate to you in a way that's loving. And then of course, if he keeps calling you names, then it makes sense to leave the room and say you won't be treated like that. And that, you know, when you're not upset at each other, to really talk about, does it make sense to be in this relationship? Because obviously, you know, you're not meeting each other's needs. And that's a really mature adult conversation, to look at that together from an objective way when you're not upset. When you're upset, like I said, we're in fight or flight and we have the emotional resources of a 2-year-old. And so what do you do to a 2-year-old that calls you stupid? Obviously you understand that they're upset and they need to be picked up and, you know, like said, oh, you're really angry right now. Of course you should be angry. Like, tell me why you're angry, and it's okay to be angry. And, you know, to listen, to not take what they say personally. And then later you can say, you know what, it's not okay to call people stupid. That's mean and disrespectful. And when you're angry, you can say, I'm angry because I need more, you know, I need us to move faster, or like whatever it is, the reason why he's calling you stupid. That it's not okay to do name calling like that. And so I'm not saying be patronizing by treating him like a 2-year-old. I'm saying, like, if you were really with a 2-year-old, you wouldn't be patronizing. You would be caring and loving, and also establish boundaries. And so that's the kind of behavior that I'm advocating. Yeah, so what I would say, Elizabeth, is that I mean, this is going to turn into a longer conversation. I'm happy to engage the conversation. I just want to give other people a chance to answer questions too. So I'll keep on engaging with you, if you want, because that's what I'm here for. I do want to encourage anyone else that has questions to ask them too. But yeah, I mean, so you're saying he's gotten in my face and yelled at me because I found out that he watched porn. And so I would just get curious about how you told him that you found out. And it sounds like he has a lot of shame about it if he got in your face. And so I'm wondering if you've been able to address his shame in a way that makes him feel safe. And so I'm just reading what you wrote here. I told him in the beginning that was the one thing I don't want around, and he told me I won't look at it. And then when I found it, he turned it on me. Yeah, I mean, that I really would advocate talking one-on-one about it if you want to. I mean, that's your call, because you'll have to see if you feel safe enough with me. I won't get offended if you don't, because shame is a very delicate topic. And so I would think that the first thing you need to do is to have self-empathy and self-compassion for your own needs, so that you get yourself out of fight or flight. And that might look like something like the exercise that we did earlier, a longer version of that. So to get yourself out of fight or flight, you really need to first just move the anger out of your body. And you might do that by breathing exercises, meditation, journaling, beating pillows, running on a treadmill, whatever you can to move the energy. And to question the beliefs in your head, because a lot of the beliefs that we have are not actually based on what's happening. They're based on the story we're making up about it. So to really journal about those beliefs, and I can lead you in a process for how to do that. And then to give yourself compassion for your own feelings. So when he watches porn, I imagine, and of course we can talk about this one-on-one, that you feel like maybe you're not special to him, or that you feel like you feel offended, that, you know, he's looking at other women, or whatever hurt that it brings up in you, to give yourself compassion for that, because that needs a lot of compassion and understanding for yourself. You might not be able to get that from him. before you can be curious about what's going on for him. Because a lot of men will use porn as a way of just blowing off steam, and it actually is nothing to do with not being attracted to the woman they're with. And it's like their way of centering themselves, and it's hard for women to understand that. Sometimes men can use porn and it doesn't mean anything bad about the relationship, or sometimes men can use porn and it is a way of avoiding intimacy, and it is a way of hiding their shame around their sexual expression. And so that's something that you can only really have a conversation with him about if you're able to let go of your own judgment. So instead of judging him, it'll take a lot of self-empathy and self-compassion to give yourself soothing for your own feelings and needs and your own history with porn, and what you're making it mean about you and what that feels like in your body. And that's something that you and I can process together if you want. And then, so it'll take that before you're able to really be authentically curious what's going on for him. What's going on for him that he doesn't want to talk about it? What's going on for him that he wants to put you down? But if he's not willing to talk about it, I mean, so there needs to be a lot of safety established first. And if he's not willing to talk about it and he just keeps putting you down, then maybe it's not the right relationship for you. And maybe, you know, you can invite him to show up for a loving conversation, and maybe he's not able to have it. So it's a delicate issue. So I would say, like I said, first, learn how to give yourself compassion and soothing for your own feelings and needs. Then do whatever you can do to create emotional safety with him. So I would not address the porn issue until you talk about your other needs. Because that's something that sounds really triggering for both of you. I would really address your other needs, like what are each of the ways that you give and receive love, and can you do that with each other? How can you create ways to connect positively every day, and safety to talk about your other feelings and your other needs, and create a safe environment to talk about it first. So that's what I would recommend, is especially since what you're saying now is that you hate what he's done, but you hate yourself for allowing him to do it. So it sounds like there are a lot of self-soothing practices that you need to learn how to do first to get yourself out of fight or flight before you address him about it. So there's some beliefs going on for you about what he's doing, and there's some ways that you're allowing him to treat you in a way that isn't loving, that you need to create boundaries around. So yeah, I mean, I would love to talk to you about it more. Unfortunately, with this webinar platform, there's not a lot of ability to ask you deeper questions, and I feel like I would need to ask you deeper questions in order to get clarity on what's really what you're feeling, what your experiences are, what your history is. So you're saying that you've taught, yeah, that, I mean, it sounds, yeah, it sounds like, what I'm just reading what you're writing on the right here. If for the YouTube replay, people won't be able to read it. So, but you're saying that, yeah, he'll call you names and ignore you, and then when he gets back, he gets in bed with you, so you have taught him how to treat you. Exactly. We teach other people how to treat us, and but it's all about timing. It's a very delicate situation. It's all about timing. You can't just start establishing a boundary as the first thing. I mean, of course, like, you can. But you have to do it in a loving way in order for him to feel connected to you. So, but it sounds like there's not a lot of safety to be loving right now as it is. So the first place that I would go is how to really recognize your own feelings and needs and give yourself compassion for them, and then how to create boundaries with him in a loving way. You know, so instead of getting in bed with him one night, if that's not really authentically how you're feeling, when he comes home, you might say something like, wow, I love and care about you, and I feel really hurt based on how you've been treating me, and I love you, and I want to find a way to feel close to you again, and I don't feel close to you right now. Can we talk about it? You know, because a lot of times if you say, like, we have to talk about something, that sounds so serious and, you know, doomsy. But if you're really giving a lot of love and reassurance, and then saying, like, you'd like to talk about what you need in order to feel close to him, he can, you know, decline that conversation. But if you're doing everything that you can to be loving both to yourself and to him, and it doesn't work, then we can have a conversation about how to respectfully end the relationship, because I don't only support couples in staying together. Obviously, we want to do what's in the highest good for you and for him. And the first step towards that, like I said, is being loving to yourself. So it really sounds like the main lesson for you here is learning how to set boundaries in a healthy way and keep the boundaries and have standards for how you deserve to be treated. And we can talk about how to say that in a loving way. Another example of that would be if he's calling you a name, and if you were to, I mean, it really, so the way to be, I share this in my most recent blog post, actually. It's, you can go on my webpage and see it under relationship advice. It's called How to Share a Harsh Truth. So you have to do this in person, not over the phone or text. But if you're going to share a harsh truth, like make a boundary, the way to do it in a loving way is to use eye contact and a slow, soft voice, and give lots of reassurance that you love and care about them, that you're here for them. And at the same time, it's not okay to call you names. So you might go up to him and maybe he's not able for you to touch him, especially if it's an abusive situation. If it's abusive, then leave. I mean, that's why I would need to talk to you to figure out whether it is abusive or not. But, you know, if you're looking him in the eye, if you're sharing, you know, in a soft way, and if you're like, honey, I love you, I care about you, and it's not okay to talk to me like that. And then keep really standing up for how you need to be treated. And if you say, if you keep talking to me like that, I'm going to leave the room, that's not being a turtle. Because a turtle is just leaving the room because they don't know how to handle conflict. This is actually standing up for what you need and creating a boundary and saying, like, what I need from you right now is to say you're angry without calling me names. What's really going on for you underneath the name calling? What do you really need from me right now? You know, and if he continues name calling, then say, if you continue that, I'm going to leave the room. And when you can stop calling me names, then we can come back and have this conversation. So you're not leaving like a turtle would. You're just maintaining a boundary. So you're saying that he'll tell me I can't handle the truth about yourself. And the question is, well, what happens when he does tell you the truth? Can you handle it? And so that's, you know, that's up for you to know. And what would you need in order to hear it? You know, because like I share in the blog post, maybe you need for him to say it in a loving way. Maybe you need for him to speak in a soft voice and own his feelings, you know, like using I statements, and like a video camera would see it, and his feelings and his needs, like we did in the exercise. So that exercise is really useful when you're sharing a harsh truth, to be able to own it from your point of view instead of blaming the other person. And of course, that's much easier said than done. So I'm just looking at my other computer to make sure everything is loading okay, and it is. But I'll talk about this for another 5 minutes because I'm really here to answer people's questions for the whole 2 hours. And I'm imagining that everyone's getting value out of this conversation, how to share your boundaries and share your truth in a loving way. Because you really want to strongly advocate for, you have needs and the other person has needs. So if the other person is being angry and critical, then if you can listen to the needs that are underneath, like, honey, what do you need from me right now? What is it that you're not getting? What is it that you need me to do differently? What is it that I'm not getting here? Really help to explain it to me. But it's not okay to have you yell at me and call me names and belittle me. So you're being there and you're being loving, but you're not standing for disrespect, and everyone can know what that means. And if he's really willing to stand up to the plate and be a partner for you, then he will be able to engage in that kind of conversation. And if he's not, then you can have a conversation about how to end it. So anyway, it is 9:57, so we have 3 minutes left. So I definitely think that, Elizabeth, that it would be useful if we talked about this one-on-one so I can get a real idea of what's going on with you instead of just hearing in the chat. That is the limitation of this webinar system. And so we have one more question from one other person, and thank you so much for sharing, Elizabeth. I hope that we can connect further about it. Someone else is asking, does it have to come from within, or just saying the words in that way enough? Does it have to come from within? You mean, do you have to really feel loving in order to say loving words? I'm assuming that's what you mean. I mean, feel free to clarify if I got that wrong. Does it have to come from within, or just saying the words in that way enough? So yeah, I'm assuming that you mean, do you have to feel loving in order to say loving words? Is that what you're saying? And that's also an interesting question. So what I would say, I mean, of course, if you're triggered, you're not going to feel loving. So that's the same thing I was telling to Elizabeth. You need to turn that love inward first and really feel that unconditional love from a higher power, or you can try feeling it for your children or your pet or someone else you love in your life, just generating that love and then turning that towards yourself and feeling self-compassion for your own feelings and needs, because that's where the love starts. So instead of judging yourself, to turn towards yourself, recognize the positive intention underneath your judgment and feel loving towards yourself. Then there's room in you to feel curious and loving towards the other person. So at the same time, I do teach tools and practices that are more structured, where when you're really triggered, you can say things to your partner like, I'm here for you, I care about you, I care about your feelings, and you might not feel loving in that moment. But in that case, love and care is a commitment, not a feeling. So you're committed to showing up in a loving way, even if you're not feeling it. And that's definitely what it takes in order to make a relationship work, to meet your partner's needs in a way that feels, true for you. But you might not feel like doing it, just like in any area of life. You might not feel like doing the right thing, but you're going to do it because it's the right thing. So in that case, you can do things to meet your partner's needs without feeling it. And I do think that that's what commitment is. And that is what causes you to grow. If someone is more like a tiger, they would just use it. Exactly. If someone's more like a tiger, and what I want to emphasize is that these tools that I'm teaching, like sharing, your vulnerable feelings and needs, or some of the more structured tools that I teach that really work when you do them. Like I teach another tool called reflective conversation, for example. And that's basically like active listening. Like if you're both really upset, then you can use this structured conversation to listen to each other when you don't feel like listening to each other. And then you validate the other person's point of view, right? Even when you don't want to, it's like, oh, okay, I have to find something that I can validate in your point of view, even if I don't feel like it. So last week I was really triggered, and I actually was really in my mind making my partner wrong, and I just wanted to yell at him and make him wrong. And so I was in my more tiger self, right? Because we both have both. And so I was just like, I have no idea what to say without making you wrong. So let's do reflective conversation. So let me listen to you and repeat back what you're saying to make sure I got it, and then validate you, because I really am not getting why you did this thing, and it's really upsetting me. And I did. And actually, like, I felt so much more empathic after I listened to him. And then, of course, he listened to me. And I had no idea how to express myself without making him wrong. So I was just doing the best that I could. But because we were doing this structured conversation, that's what provided the safety for him to listen to me and get to the feelings and needs underneath what I was saying and validate my point of view. And afterwards, we actually so got where we were both coming from that then we were able to soothe each other and work out a way to do it differently next time. And then we felt really loving and connected. I mean, the whole thing took a couple hours, of course, when you're really triggered. But so yeah, it's going to feel unnatural at first, because what feels natural is following the habits that you've been using your whole life, because that's what natural, is. We're creatures of habit. So of course, if you're doing something different, you're not going to feel like doing it. But, it's sort of like working out. When you first start working out, you don't feel like doing it. And then eventually, if you get over the hump, after like a month or so of working out consistently, then you feel like doing it. So it's kind of the same thing with retraining how you express your feelings and needs. It's going to feel unnatural at first. And then eventually, once you practice it enough, it will feel more natural and it will feel more authentic. Or at least you'll feel like it's worth it. Like, I did not feel like using this tool on Friday night. When I was triggered, I did not feel like using it, but I was like, I knew that if I use it, that we'd feel more connected afterwards. And we did. And now we're in this really loving space with each other. So I knew that it would be worth it. I knew that there would be like a short-term cost and a long-term benefit and feeling good. So I hope that answers your question. And I hope that you feel that that you see the potential for using tools like these, that they would be worth it. Not that they would be fun, but that they'd be worth it, and they'd help you grow and to eventually have a more fulfilling, loving experience. And so I encourage all of you, it's 10:04 now, unless anyone else has any questions that they want to type in really quick. I encourage all of you to reach out to me one-on-one if you would like more support, because I am offering free 90-minute session. And that's my gift to you, just because I really want to support people and just spread the work that I do more out there. That's why I'm offering these free webinars. And, obviously, if we are matched to work together, then we'll explore that. But the call itself is free, and I just love to provide value, and I love to share these tools that help people experience love and connection again. And I just want to appreciate you all again for being here. That the fact that you're still here shows that you're the type of person that wants to take responsibility for being loving, and that wants to take responsibility for creating happiness in your life and not blame the other person. And that's just what the world needs, is more people that have goodwill and that really want to undo their own blocks to intimacy so that you're feeling happy and you're feeling fulfilled. And I'm so appreciating that you took the time to be here. And I really look forward to staying connected And I hope that this has been valuable for you. So feel free to email me and share what you got out of it. It always helps me to keep improving. I will be doing this webinar once a month or so, so tell your friends about it. And I hope that you have a fabulous rest of your day or night, whatever time zone you're in. I'm going to end now, and I encourage you to check your email. I'll be following up with you. And I hope that you have a fabulous night, and here's to spreading more love in the world. Mwah!